Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup of Joe show. I'm Joe. That's Jeremy. I promise to never do an opening like that again. Good morning! What is happening? What is happening? So, we didn't see a movie this week. We brought you two reviews last week. Two overly long reviews last week. So, this week we're going to do one of our specialty episodes, if you will. Again, we're just ranking up all these moves that I'm never going to do again on the show. We, to compatible with the biopic, you're going to do the show next time. I can't speak or move my hands in any way. Because Straight Outta Compton came out this weekend, which we'll get to. We'll preview it, I guess, later in the show. But we are going to talk about some of the greatest biopics of all time that we have seen. This was very difficult. We took like a half an hour to prepare here. So, if you disagree, I'm sorry. We've done more preparation on this episode than we've ever done before, pretty much. So, we'll get to our list here. We narrowed it down to 5.
Are we doing honorable mentions?
We can do honorable mentions, absolutely.
Okay.
That's it. I have The Fighter at 6. I think it's a great movie, but struggled to put it in the top 5 because I don't consider it a true biopic. The Wikipedia page for biopics is just totally not right. It lists like every movie as a biopic, including like Star Wars and the Bond franchise. But anyway, we did our best here. As you can see really quickly, all these lists that just it was extensive. So we narrowed it down. I have The Fighter at 6. I would have put others, but yeah, if you have some honorable mentions, you go for it.
Well, I'll just rattle these off. My honorable mentions include Moneyball, A Beautiful Mind, Rudy, and The Wolf of Wall Street. They did not make the top 5, but they're good movies.
All great pictures, and one you may see later on someone's list. So, all right. Since you have already said it, and it's my number 5, I'm going with Rudy. Rudy is one of those films. It's great. It has withstood the test of time. It's a great, motivational story, and it has you crying at the end. I mean, what more do you want? Or what more do you want out of a movie in general? And this just happens to be a biopic about a real person named Rudy Ruettiger. Clever first name after knowing his last name is going to be Ruettiger. But, yeah, I mean, this is great. Great performance by Sean Astin. You have Jon Favreau in the film. You have whoever the, is he a janitor or whatever he is to Notre Dame, the janitor / maintenance man or whatever. Sure, groundskeeper is probably the best, actually, for him. He is great. I've never seen him again, but, I mean, he is great in the film. And it just all perfectly builds to the climax of the film when he does get the sack and everyone goes nuts and Jon Favreau's like, yeah, who's the wild man now? It's great. It's great. It's got everything you love, and it's a biopic. And it's a real biopic, as we narrowed it down. Rudy.
Yes. Rudy's a good flick.
Yeah. Okay. Go to your number 5. That's
Okay.
how we do things here, right? I don't know.
Alright, so my number 5 is also a sports biopic, and that is Without Limits, which is the story of long-distance American runner Steve Prefontaine. Now, there were 2 Steve Prefontaine biopics released around the same time. There was Without Limits, starring Billy Crudup, and Prefontaine, starring Jared Leto?
I think we're going with Leto.
Leto? Okay.
But
Well, anyway, yeah, so, there are people in both camps. I personally think that Without Limits is the superior film. And, yeah, pretty much everything in this film is well done. Billy Crudup turns in a pretty good performance. He looks convincing in the role. He's got the long hair, the mustache. You know, it was the '70s. That was the look of the times and everything. And you know, Prefontaine is in some ways still like the premier like American runner. He just had like an American like kind of cocky attitude, but you can still like get behind him kind of thing. And spoiler warning, his career and life was tragically cut short in a car accident, so he was never able to, you know, get on the medal stand at the Olympics. But a lot of people think that he would have done that in the next one after the previous year. I forget whichever year it was didn't quite go his way. But yeah, he certainly did a lot to help the popularity of running in America and all that. And we miss you, Pre.
I'm going to go number 4. I have no comments on the film because I've never seen it, but it sounds great. And you being a runner, it's understandable.
Yeah.
I have 127 hours at 4. I consider this a biopic and a product placement for Gatorade. I'm just kidding. James Franco has his best performance ever. 127 hours. He should have won an Academy Award for it. I don't remember who won that year, but I think it should have been him. I consider this a biopic based on. I mean, it's him. I mean, okay, it doesn't span his lifetime, but it is one moment in his life, and the movie is solely based around him. He is pretty much the person that's on screen more often than not than other people. He's always on screen, but you know, other people are just around a very limited amount. Excellent performance by James Franco. 127 hours. Number 4.
All right, maybe that'll show up on my list later. But anyway, my number 4 pick is October Sky, and this one's going back a little bit to the 19. I think it was 99 actually, and this was one of, if not Jake Gyllenhaal's first role, and it, you know, even back then showed that the kid could act, and this movie tells the story of Homer Hickam, and he was in I believe it's West Virginia, like coal mining town back in the 60s, or late 50s actually, and it was the kind of town where like everybody, once you graduate high school, you just go to the mines. Like nobody goes to college unless you're a really good football player, that sort of thing. So that's basically just the life that's been laid out for them, and that wasn't good enough for Homer, and he wanted to do something more with himself. So after he sees Sputnik race across the October Sky title drop, he decides, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. So he works with his friends to build rockets and get into the field of rocketry and everything, despite the fact that his father doesn't think it's a productive use of his time. They butt heads a lot, and eventually, again, spoiler warning, I'm just going to spoil all these movies, Homer ends up, you know, getting that that college scholarship at the end there, and it's a very nice story. I watch it every October because, you know, I'm like that, even though most of the movie doesn't take place in October, but it's in the title. So yeah, very, very beautiful and underrated score by Mark Isham. Yeah, that's a good part too.
Great movie. Let's roll through these quicker. Not give an entire plot synopsis. See these movies; they're all good. There, we've done the plot. Number 3, Lincoln. Daniel Day-Lewis, Academy Award winning. He wins every time he's in a movie. He's only in a movie every 5 years or so. So I mean, he's great as Lincoln. This is a great movie. I actually think it is a thrilling movie, even though it is, you know, based on one court decision, the biggest one, ending of slavery. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Lincoln. Great performances, especially by Daniel Day-Lewis.
I fell asleep.
Yes.
So my number 3 pick is 127 Hours. And since Joe pretty much went into that, there's not much more that needs to be said. It's totally on James Franco's shoulders. He carries it. It's an interesting story. The book on which the story is based, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, which I think is a better title, is also good, but you can tell that Aaron Ralston isn't really a writer. But yeah, it's still interesting, and that goes a bit more into his backstory, if you're interested.
And number 2, I'm going with Cinderella Man. This is just it's a phenomenal film. It's one of the greatest boxing movies of all time. And it's absolutely, Russell Crowe's phenomenal in it. I mean, it's a great story. What's this? Paul Giamatti's amazing in it. I mean, I love this movie. I'll watch it every time it's on. It's so good. It's so triumphant. It's a great film. Very underrated, actually. Doesn't really. I don't think it gets the just deserves that it should. So Cinderella Man, go watch it, everyone. Number 2.
All right, my number 2 was The Imitation Game, and since Joe told me I'm not allowed to go into plot summaries, let's just assume that you know the basic story of The Imitation Game. So that said, disregarding the story,
I just don't mean beat for beat till the entire. You gave the entire plot of October.
I know.
No one needs to see that film.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
All right, okay. No. All right, my bad. So anyway, The Imitation Game is, the story of Alan Turing and everything, and trying to break the Enigma machine during World War II, that sort of thing. And also he's gay, and that was a big issue back then. So it's really, really good performances all around, especially from Benedict Cumberbatch in the main role. Keira Knightley's really good. I just like the story. Even though there's not much in the way of action, it's still a very thrilling movie and that sort of thing. Really good score by Alexandre Desplat.
Yeah. Since that is my number 1 pick, The Imitation Game, best biopic I've ever seen. Yeah, you said all of those things. I feel like it should have won Best Picture this year, but a lot of people don't feel that way. I think it touched a lot of the emotional beats. I really think it hit on all of them. I think that toward the end of the movie, there's an emotional scene between Benedict Cumberbatch and Keira Knightley, and it's one of the greatest scenes like I've ever really seen because it really took me out of the movie, and I felt like I was watching something real. It felt so real. It's up there with the end of Captain Phillips when Tom Hanks is emotionally breaking down. I mean, it's just like, I love scenes like that where everything just seems so real. You feel like you're not even watching a movie, you're just watching real life. And The Imitation Game does that, and there's probably a movie called The Imitation, so I should finish it. But yeah, I mean, it hits all the emotional beats, and it's from top to bottom. I really think it deserved Best Picture, so I'm going with number 1, The Imitation Game. And Jeremy's going with Into the Wild, number 1. No, I'm sorry, that was mean. Jeremy's going to go for it though.
Well, yeah, my number 1 pick is Into the Wild. And Into the Wild is the story of Christopher McCandless, who was a fresh college graduate back in the early 90s who decided, I'm out of here, and he just went to live off in the wilderness. Well, I mean, before he did that, he kind of traveled the country and hitchhiked and that sort of thing just to make it on his own and not, join the 9-to-5 rat race kind of life that his parents wanted for him and that society seemed to want. So, I mean, it's a beautiful story. It's really well done. Emile Hirsch kills it in the lead role. All the other supporting actors are great. And as I always say about Into the Wild, you can respect it as a well-done and well-made film, but if you don't like the character of Christopher McCandless and you don't sympathize with his story, then it's hard to like the movie. Obviously, I do, and I would recommend it to anyone to at least try it.
Yeah, all joking aside, Into the Wild is a phenomenal film. It's like, and you said it correctly. I mean, it's a movie that I don't really want to watch again. But it's interesting because there are so many character studies in the film. It's not just him, it's the people that he runs into. It really is a beautiful story. It's a very emotional story. But it's not the happiest thing. And coming from me, talking about The Imitation Game, that I'll watch over and over again. I guess it's just a matter of taste.
Yeah, I've watched it in the wild like 10 times.
Yeah, I mean, it's some movies are difficult. That's a difficult watch, but it's a great movie. Imitation Game's also a difficult watch, but again, great films. Hit it with the box office, Jeremy. Hope you guys enjoyed the biopic special episode. of the Cup of Joe show, we only have 5 minutes left. So
That we do. That's not much time.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's just do the top 3 from last weekend in that case. Our number 3 picture was The Gift, and that opened to 11.9 million. That's alright. That's solid. The production budget was only 5 million, and it's got really good reviews, seems to have decent word of mouth, so
yeah,
maybe it could end up having a decent run at the box office and turning a profit. Our number 2 movie was Fantastic Four, and that opened to 25.7 million. Now this was really the story of the weekend, despite opening in or perhaps because of opening in number 2. And that's absolutely awful. Like comic book movies are not supposed to open that low. That's lower than Ghost Rider, lower than Daredevil way back in 2003. That's just absolutely atrocious. It's less than half of either of the mid-2000s Fantastic Fours. So, there's nothing good you can say about this. It's absolutely awful. And, I don't see any reason that it's not going to fall off a cliff after this. It could make less than 50 million, like, in total. Which,
yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
In better news, our number 1 movie was Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. That fell 49% to 28.5 million, giving it a total of 107.8. So that's a good, if not great, hold. I was kind of hoping it might fall closer to 40 or 45, but that's still pretty good. There's some competition for action fans from Fantastic Four. So, at this point, I really don't think Rogue Nation is going to be able to catch Ghost Protocol.
Mm-hmm.
It still seems headed for a total around 170-ish, which is pretty good. It'll be interesting to see if The Man from U.N.C.L.E. does anything to its legs, because they're both spy movies. But anyway, I'm still happy to see that the Rogue Nation is doing pretty well for itself.
Yeah, I'm glad it at least kept the number 1 spot. Fantastic Four, I'm glad to see it bombed. Fox just got behind this movie, even though they hated it. I think it would have made more money, but they were just like, everyone. The director came out and was just like, oh, so why do we want to see it? We did, but in general, I've never seen more of like a train wreck than that. Like, there's just like a bomb every day about this movie before it came out, and then there were bombs after it. I've never seen so much of a horrible, like, just breakdown of a movie. But anyway, moving on. We have 2 movies. Let's start with Straight Outta Compton. That's the more interesting one. It's getting great reviews, and this movie may not be like geared toward certain audiences. I don't
White
really
people.
I don't really have the biggest interest to see it. That's because I don't really know NWA. We obviously know the people now, but I don't know NWA. I don't know anything about them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is going to be a really good movie. And I'm really happy to see that it is doing very well. And I believe it is going to do very well for itself at the box office.
Yeah.
And, yeah, like I said, it's getting great reviews. I'm happy to see that because we can get more of these things. I'm glad that it seems like the studio, the team involved did right by these guys who definitely deserved a biopic about them. Mm-hmm. This is a huge era in music and in culture in general. So I'm happy to see that it's doing very well.
Yeah, for the most part, I would agree with all that. Straight Outta Compton looks like it's going to absolutely blow up at the box office based on its Thursday night previews and everything. It's possible it gets over 50 for the weekend, which would put it on par with 8 Mile. Now, moving on, we also have The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and that stars Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer, neither of whom has really been in a success outside franchise movies. So, I don't think Armie Hammer's been... Well, there was The Social Network, but...
Social Network.
I think it looks all right. It's a Guy Ritchie movie. It looks fun, but I don't know.
I actually agree with that assessment. I would see the movie. I would probably enjoy the movie, but with all these great, it's kind of it's in between like Mission Impossible and like the next James Bond. I mean,
Yeah.
you're at a different level with those spy movies. So, anyway, we're out of time. We'll see you next week.